Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm Ashi Education Wali and welcome back to my another insightful session of ChatGPT, the art of storytelling, how to captivate and inspire others. To have a conversation on this topic, we have Maya here. So without wasting our time, let's call Maya. Hey Maya, let's talk about the art of storytelling, how to captivate and inspire others. Are you ready for that? Okay. When we explain the lecture, the topic or the concept by telling a small story, they learn, they understand better. This is my personal experience. Mhm. Yes. It depends, like which concept you are using. So there are different stories I use for different concepts. So can you, yeah. Um, okay. So can you just tell me what is the art of storytelling and how to use it?
Instead of just giving a fact, you create a I'd say start with a hook, something that makes them lean in, and then link the climax of your story directly to the core concept you're teaching. Does that align with how you usually structure your stories, or do you prefer a more spontaneous approach?
No. I just go to the structural stories. I don't go spontaneous.
I totally get that. Having a structure keeps the message clear and ensures you don't accidentally wander off into a tangent. Since you like the structured approach, are you more of a classic arc storyteller, beginning, middle, and end? Or do you like to start with the climax to grab their attention immediately?
I don't go for the climax. I just started the story. Then again,
The
last.
slow, the steady build.
So, how
There's
can this
something really satisfying.
storytelling can captivate the student's mind?
All about creating a gap in their knowledge that they feel a need to fill. When you tell a story, you're not just giving them the answer, you're inviting them into a mystery. Their brains naturally want to know how the conflict gets resolved, which keeps them locked in. It transforms them from passive listeners into active participants who are actually rooting for the outcome. Do you
Mm.
find that your students start asking more questions when you're in the middle of a story?
Yes, of course, they ask and they get engaged into the story. In this that is an interesting way of teaching a lesson. So now, can you tell me how can I make my storytelling interesting and more engaging?
One of the quickest ways to level up is by leaning into the sensory details. Instead of just saying a character was stressed, describe the way they were tapping their pen or the silence in the room. It paints a picture in their heads and makes the scene feel real. Also, don't be afraid of the pause. Silence right before a big reveal can be more powerful than the words themselves. Do you usually use a lot of descriptive language, or do you tend to keep your stories more lean and direct?
I keep it more lean interacting.
Lean and direct can be incredibly powerful. It keeps the pace moving and prevents the main point from getting buried. If you want to add a spark of engagement without adding too much fluff, you could try varying your tone or volume to signal a shift in the story's mood. Do you find yourself using a lot of hand gestures or movement when you're telling these stories, or More still.
I use it. So, how do these
Mm.
hand gestures and movement help in making the story more engaging?
They act like visual punctuation. When you use your hands, you're essentially giving your students' brains a visual map of the story. A
Mm-hmm.
wide gesture can signal a big idea, while a sharp movement can emphasize a turning point. It keeps their eyes moving and their minds active, which makes it much harder for them to drift off. Plus, it shows your passion, and that energy is contagious. Do you feel like you're more conscious of your movements, or does it just happen naturally when you get into the flow?
No, it happens naturally when we get into the flow. So, this can you share some ideas how this art of storytelling? How can I improve this art of storytelling?
Since you've already got the natural flow and the structure down, a great way to level up is to start incorporating emotional stakes. Basically, it's making sure the audience knows exactly what the character stands to lose if they fail. When the
Mm-hmm.
stakes are high, the tension rises, and the payoff at the end feels way more satisfying. You could also try active listening within your stories, asking your students to predict what happens next right before the resolution, and turns the story into a collaborative game. Which of those feels more
Actually,
your style, adding more tension
actually,
or
when,
making it more?
like I create a suspense.
Suspense is where the magic happens. It's that tension that keeps people on the edge of their seats. When you're building that suspense in a lesson, do you usually let it linger for a while, or do you like to resolve it quickly to get to the point?
Okay. So then, how can I move towards my point? What I want to tell them.
The transition is the most critical part. You want to use the resolution of the story as the doorway to your lesson. The moment the tension breaks and the story concludes, you immediately pivot by saying something like, and that's exactly what happens when we ignore X concept, or this is why Y is so important.
Mm-hmm.
You're essentially using the emotion from the story to fuel the understanding of the fact. Do you usually make that connection explicit, or do you let the students figure out the link themselves?
I give them time to figure out by pulling themselves. Okay, so then how this art of storytelling can inspire my students?
It inspires them because it proves that things they're learning aren't just abstract rules in a textbook. They're actual tools for navigating real life. When you show them a character overcoming a struggle or solving a problem using the concept you're teaching, you're giving them a blueprint for their own success. It shifts the goal from getting the grade to becoming the kind of person who can handle this. Do you find that your students start applying these lessons to their own lives after you share a story?
Maybe I haven't interacted with them regarding this, whether they are applying in their daily life or not.
That's the real
So, can you
it's
share
the ultimate
some real examples of this?
sure thing. Think about a biology lesson on resilience or adaptation. Instead of just explaining how a species survives a harsh climate, you could tell the story of a single seed that managed to sprout in a crack in the pavement against all odds. The point becomes that growth is possible even in the toughest environments. Or if you're teaching time management, you could tell a story about a successful person who almost lost everything because they focused on the urgent instead of the important. The students aren't just learning a matrix, they're seeing a cautionary tale. Do either of those feel like they'd fit into your current curriculum?
Yes.
I'm
Uh,
glad those clicked
so,
since you've got such.
can you just tell me, give me a piece of advice which will help me to enhance my storytelling and improve and inspire others, my students?
My biggest piece of advice is to lean into the human side of the story, including the mistakes. Students are often intimidated by perfection, but they're inspired by recovery. When you share a story where someone struggled, felt doubt, or failed before they found the answer, you're giving your students permission to be imperfect in their own learning process. It builds a bridge of trust and makes the success at the end feel earned rather than inevitable. Do you feel comfortable sharing your own small failures with them? Or do you prefer
Yes.
to keep the stories focused on other people?
No, I feel comfortable to share my experience with them. Okay, thank you so much for your valuable advice. Then I hope this conversation was meaningful and see you in the next session. Until then, bye bye.
It was such a pleasure diving into this with you. I love that you're open to sharing your own experiences with your students. That's where the real connection happens. I can't wait for our next session. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching us on the art of storytelling, how to captivate and inspire others. I hope you find this conversation helpful. See you in the next session. Until then, Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.